answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal charts. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. If you guys would want your own natal chart reading or synastry reading or progressed natal chart reading, the information for all of that is going to be in the description box below. You guys can send me an email and we will go from there. Okay, you guys can go on my website underneath the readings tab. Hey everyone, welcome to the chat. I see we have some questions already in here. If you guys are just joining the live, I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. Hey Luna, how are you? What's new? What's the 411? So I'm just gonna start at the top here. So one of you guys said, hey, do I know anything about the Great Attractor? No, I do not. I'm gonna screenshot that so I can look into what that is. Hey Mary, you said Aquarius, you have Mars in Cancer, 0 degrees in the 7th house. Can I explain things so much? Yes, I'm so glad that you were here also during the lives as well, so thank you. Okay, so you have Mars in Cancer. Mars in Cancer is a little bit of a struggle. The thing is with Mars in Cancer, what you always want to do is you want to see, do you have any other positive aspects to Mars, okay, that are going to kind of give you a little bit more of like a support with that energy, because Mars in Cancer is a little bit of a struggle. It can be very lethargic. It can be very much like going with the flow. It can get overwhelmed energetically because it's like Mars is exalted in Capricorn, okay? So when it's in Cancer, it's in its quote unquote fall here. But the thing is, at the end of the day, there's nothing you can do. It's just a matter of seeing how can you balance the energy within you. So if you don't have any aspects to your Mars, for example, or any other things that are taking place in your chart that are going to balance the Mars in Cancer out, basically you're going to have to put in the time and the work and the effort to kind of see how does a Mars in Capricorn operate, basically, and adopt some of those traits. And you guys can do this for any sort of pollen placement and these types of things, okay? Because that's all you can do at the end of the day. And then you'll see that you are a little bit more tired because you're going against your own energy, right? Because your natural energy and your natural state is to chill, is to go with the flow, but that's not how things get done down here, okay? Down here on this earth plane. So to actually get things done, you kind of have to look at the earthly energies and how do they operate, and then kind of incorporate their traits into your personality is basically what that is, okay? If you have some sort of goal or ambition in mind. Welcome to the people joining. Hey, oh my gosh, Terry, I'm so glad that you caught me live. Hey, Concern. Hey, CC Sagittarius. What's up, you guys? Hey, Esperanza. You guys are so awesome. Yes, it is election eve. You guys, we're going to send good vibes so that everybody remains calm tomorrow, okay? Regardless of whatever the outcome is. Make sure you guys double tap the live to like the live. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You said you're always tired. Yeah, because as a Mars in Cancer, it's like just existing in the world. You're going against your own natural energy. Do you know what I mean? So it's this, because your natural energy is to chill, is to go with the flow, is to kind of be a little bit more, like if you look at the Ayurveda, Mars in Cancer would fall under like the Kapha type of lifestyle, you know? Chilling, not really feeling overly ambitious, not really caring, these types of things, right? So it's like, even if you work like an everyday job, like let's say you work a 9-to-5 type of job, or you work like whatever, let's say it's a full-time job of any kind, you're still gonna be tired because those jobs are made for people who operate more so out of the masculine energy, right? So even engaging in that, you're going against your natural energy and your natural rhythm, which then in turn makes you tired, right? But on top of that, if you have some sort of goal or dream or ambition in mind, you're gonna have to work even harder, right? To kind of incorporate these like masculine energy traits. And then on top of that, Mars in Cancer can also struggle with boundaries. They can absorb a lot, all these types of things, okay, when you have Mars in Cancer. So you can look at it as like your solar plexus, your core identity is Cancer, okay, when you have Mars in Cancer. So you can kind of go into like even burning yourself out because you're overly nurturing, for example, you know, tending to everyone around you. So you'd have to explore and be like, well, why am I doing this all the time, for example, right? A lot of the time with Cancer energy comes from an abandonment wound or being abandoned in previous lifetimes. So it's like when they kind of have that family feel, whether it's with their friends, their own family, or like they've created it through, you know, like you create your own family in this lifetime, for example, like let's say you have kids and a partner and these kinds of things. Well, in that case, you might kind of like, again, you know, really tend to everybody and then you burn yourself out. So for Mars in Cancer, it's all about learning how to fill your own cup first, because then these people can go into like passive aggressive energy when you guys are mad, but it can also be like a protective energy. I will say that much, right? Because if you guys look at, for example, like animals, it's usually like the baby animals are going to be with the mother animal, and like the mother animal can be very protective of the baby animal. So you guys can kind of look at Mars and Cancer in that way as well. Hey, Lorraine. Hey. Yes. Oh my gosh. I haven't said it in a while. I don't even know. What else are you guys saying in here? Yes, I'm so glad that you guys are in here. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. I'm just going to be going in order here. And also Mary, you have it in the 7th house, which it's like a struggle also, right? Because it's again opposite to Mars energy, right? Mars is that energy that wants to go, it wants to start, and then the 7th house is like, well, let's look at everybody's opinions and what do they think, and I have to have a partner to do this, I have to have a buddy, I have to have a friend. That's kind of like that 7th house energy. And like by the time the 7th house finally makes that decision, the ship has sailed is really what that is. So again, learning how can you be a little bit more, jumping on the opportunities and these types of things when they kind of arise, rather than like debating, oh, should I, shouldn't I, should I, what will this person think, what will that person think? Welcome to all the people joining. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal chart. So if you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. Hey DV, you said you have your North Node in Leo in the 2nd house, trining Neptune in Sagittarius and sextiling Pluto in Libra. What does that mean? Okay, so your life purpose, first of all, it might not be clear to you because it is Neptune, but it can also be something artistic, but it can also deal with transformation, for example, because it is Pluto that is in there as well. Because it is a sextile, it's kind of more of a complementary energy, okay, with a sextile energy in there. So it's like, ultimately, you are trying to get to some sort of position of power and control, but it's not going to be like overly aggressive. I hope that makes sense, okay? So it's like the North Node in Leo, and this is like the life purpose, like the direction that you're heading in, okay? So North Node in Leo is going to be like, someone who wants to be on a stage, they want to be seen. It's a creative type of person, and it's in the 2nd house, so you're meant to master money. But again, because it's sextiling Pluto, it's not going to be that overly aggressive Plutonian energy, for example, where Pluto will do anything, right, to get into positions of power and control, kind of like shadow Pluto, for example. So it's kind of like complementary added on top, right? It's like, it could be someone, for example, who's interested in like being an actor or an actress, right? Like getting the money and getting the wealth, and then you getting the money and the wealth is kind of putting you into these positions of power. For all the people joining, make sure you guys double tap the live, just so the likes, up there where it says like, the thumbs up. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean, obviously, if you guys so choose to do so. Hey, Frezzy. Welcome. You said you haven't been here for a while. No worries. As long as you're here, that's great. Thank you for joining, for stopping by. Let's see what else are you guys saying in here. How are you guys doing? You said, what are your Aquarius intentions toward you right now? What are your Aquarius intentions towards you right now? You were going to second the question on the great tractor. I'm going to screenshot that. I'm going to look into that because I have not heard about that. So I'm going to explore and see what that means. And if I learn, then I'll come back and teach you guys. You said, hey, can I explain 4-degree Jupiter in Capricorn in the 7th house? You're having trouble understanding it. Okay, so Jupiter, so it's interesting because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, right? So this is going to be like the opposite case scenario now compared to what we were talking about earlier for Mars in Cancer, right? So Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, okay? Because Jupiter, you can kind of look at it as like the teacher energy is basically what it is, okay? So when Jupiter is in Cancer, it likes to be there because it's kind of like that parent. Do you know what I mean? It's that nurturing vibe of someone who is going to be very caring and patient and nurturing with people. Like, let's say when you want to teach them, and like, let's say you're in some sort of role or position where you are teaching people, facilitating people, like that's Jupiter in Cancer, right? When you have Jupiter in Capricorn, it quote unquote falls here. So it's like, again, it might fall, but it's like you have to look and see what's going on. Are there aspects? Are there other things that are taking place in your chart to balance that energy? Or if you choose to, you can look at it in a positive sense as well, right? Because sometimes people look at their charts and they're like, oh, this is negative and that's negative. But it's like, at the end of the day, it's the energy in your chart. So it's just a matter of working with that energy. Do you know what I mean? So Jupiter in Capricorn, personally, okay, I find this energy to operate very well down here on this earth plane because the earth plane is Capricorn and Taurus and Virgo, right? So it's like, it can be a wealth placement. It can be very good at getting the material things. The whole reason Jupiter doesn't like to be in Capricorn is because it can't expand the spiritual knowledge and the spiritual wisdom and all these types of things, right? Because that's what Jupiter wants to do. It feels restricted when it's in Capricorn. But if you look at it from the perspective of like the things that actually, at least for now, right, where you can get monetary gain down here on this earth plane, or things that have quote unquote value at this point in time, it's Capricorn types of things, right? So you can make a lot of material gains with that placement, okay? Jupiter and Capricorn. Now, the fact that you have it in your 7th house, you might kind of feel like you always have to be in a relationship or a unit or a partnership to kind of activate abundance in your life. So you might have to kind of break free from that energy, okay? If it is holding you back. But also Jupiter in the 7th house can feel more abundant when they are in relationships. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, let's say you're dating someone, or let's say you have a best friend, or let's say you have, you know, like a business partner that you're working with, like these types of things, okay? Jupiter is going to be expanding abundance in that particular area. Hey everyone, hey Edward, how are you guys all doing? You said hypothetical / metaphorical, Mars opposite Pluto, who wins, who is stronger? Different / separate questions. Have I looked at the astrology for the election of the candidates chart? So interesting, because I was thinking about that. I actually wasn't paying attention until last week, and then my friend was like, what do you think is going to happen next week, which was the election this week? And I was like, what? And I was like, in my mind, it was like November 19th is the election, which is so interesting that like that was in my mind, right? So then I started thinking about it, because I'm like, nothing is a coincidence. So I was like, why did I have it in my mind that the election is going to be on the last day of Pluto being in Capricorn? So I kept thinking, and I kept thinking, and I kept thinking. So I'm going to throw out a wild theory, and this is just a theory, okay, based off of my own opinion. Let's say somebody wins, and that person who wins deals with the old Pluto and Capricorn energy, and then when Pluto goes into Aquarius, maybe not exactly on that day, okay? Maybe not exactly on that day, but maybe, you know, when we have the shift of Pluto going into Aquarius, there's going to be another presidential person who goes into office or something of the sort. Something of the sort, because Pluto in Capricorn is the old energy, so it doesn't make sense to me. Do you know what I mean? That it's like someone who's going to be leading for the next years to come. The elections are during the period of time where it's like the old energy. So I found that to be really interesting. Those are just theories. I'm just throwing that out there. Let's see what happens. We're going to find out tomorrow. And now then I went super into my crown, okay? And maybe this is going super into the future, but I was thinking about Pluto in Aquarius, and I was like, what if, and this was kind of taking me more so to like the January energy, actually, when I was thinking about this, and I was like, what if there is a president that gets chosen? Okay, this is just a theory, okay? So I'm going to throw it out there. It could be wild, but you know what? It is what it is, okay? So let's say there is a president, and like that president ends up being quote unquote the final actual human physical president. What if when we go into Pluto and Aquarius, and as we're moving through those energies, people start to turn toward AI? I'm just gonna throw that out there, because that's kind of like Aquarius energy. So I'm putting that out there. Let's see what happens. Okay, these are just theories and just like me thinking about things. But yeah, I found that really interesting that, you know, in my mind, the election wasn't until November 19th. So I'm curious to see like what ends up happening. Let's see. Only time will tell. You said that's a move. Yeah, exactly. It moves on the 19th. It's going into Aquarius on the 19th. So for whatever reason, in my mind, like the entire time I kept thinking the election was on the 19th, because in my mind it was like connected to like Pluto leaving Capricorn, which is so strange, right? So let's see. I'm just gonna go back up. Oh, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. You said, why do you keep attracting men who light up your 8th house, your Scorpio 8th house in Synastry? They oppose your moon and your Mars. Always sexual low vibe lust. What are you supposed to be learning? How can you change the pattern? See, that's the thing sometimes in astrology, you guys. Sometimes there's nothing to learn. And this is going to contradict the New Age, because the New Age and like all of those theories are like, oh, we come to Earth to learn lessons. Earth is a school. I don't necessarily believe that anymore, especially after learning astrology. Sometimes you just have the energy in your chart and you're like vibrating the energy because it's there. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing to learn. Sometimes what you're learning is to not engage with these people. Do you know what I mean? Because you are aware of the energy. So I don't think it's something that you're doing. I don't think it's something that, you know, there's, you know, something to learn here, right? Like, I don't necessarily think it's that, because it's like, it's really interesting just to see how everything is, because it's like, again, in the New Age, it's all about lessons and learning, but eventually you get to the point and it's like, okay, you've learned all these things. Like, look, like you're aware of it, right? Like you have the awareness. So it's like, there's nothing to learn there anymore, right? Other than the fact that you have the awareness and to like not engage with these people. And it's like, you're always going to attract those people is really what that is, because it's that synastry. You know what I mean? So it's like, maybe when you see that synastry taking place with someone, you just don't engage with that person, and you see who else there is around in these types of things. So it could be this, like in terms of changing the pattern, it could just be like not engaging with those types of people. Because you'll see this, like, again, because it's Scorpio in the 8th house, that's the shadow of Scorpio. Like, you will attract those like lustful types of individuals, okay? It just is what it is. Esperanza, oh good, I'm glad. Yes, some interesting ideas. You said you totally see that 17, yeah, interesting. Oh, interesting, let's see what happens. Like, it's really thinking outside of the box, but it's like there's still something that's taking place here because like, okay, and then what happens, you guys, is gonna be wild. So like, I can't say whether this is a confirmation or not confirmation, but I just found it so interesting because I was like so far in my crown. I was like making food, and then I was like, oh, like let me see. So I kept thinking about that, right? Like, why did I think in my mind that it was on November 19th? Like this was a few days ago. I was like, why did I think that? And you know what's so interesting? So I thought of all these things, like these potential ideas and theories. Okay, I'm just gonna keep saying it's ideas and theories. And I kept thinking that, and then I'm like cooking and I'm like, oh, like I bought that cheese. I'm like, let me see when the cheese expires. And you guys, you know when it expires? November 19th. I was like, wow, like what are the odds? So let's see. What else you guys saying in here? You're welcome. How do I interpret the energy of someone who has Saturn and Mars conjunct in Leo? That's like restriction on their creativity is really, really what that is. The Saturnian energy, and it can actually make them shy. The Saturn energy, sometimes when you have Saturn aspects in a chart, it can make the person shy because it can restrict them, especially Leo, because like Leo is here to shine, right? And then Mars in Leo is like, it's your solar plexus, you know? Here to shine, here to be on that stage, and then Saturn comes through and it restricts it. But also what Saturn could be teaching Mars is discipline at the same time, right? So it can be kind of like, you know, like let's say you're interested in being on a stage or an entrepreneur or maybe an actor or an actress or something of the sort where you're being seen. Well, Saturn's going to give you that discipline, you know, because sometimes Mars can be impulsive is really what that is. Mars is going to start this and it's going to start this because it's like Mars likes the novelty of things. So then Saturn can give you the discipline. So like Saturn and Mars conjunct, like sometimes you can see this, for example, in like people who are business minded or like good business minded energy, right? Because Saturn's giving you the discipline. And the thing is, you guys, again, this is my own opinion. I always got to throw it out there. But I feel like this earth plane is ruled by Saturn. I always say this, right? So it's like people who have that understanding already, you do well down here, right? Because you know that you have to put in time and effort and dedication towards something, and then Saturn rewards you. That's just how Saturn works, and that's how things work down here. So welcome to everyone joining. I'm answering astrology, metaphysical questions about your natal charts. So feel free to comment below. You said Capricorn has to be ruling the election. It has to start on Capricorn, so it takes the energy into the next presidency. Let's see what happens. I think we're gonna see a lot of changes starting from next year because a lot of even the outer planets are gonna be moving. So it's just like this period of time, like even Pluto going back into Capricorn is just like, it's a period of time to just like purge and like release like the remnants of that whole Capricorn Pluto cycle is basically what that is. So like it's old energy. Do you know what I mean? It's like the old system and these types of things. So it's like, it's just so interesting to me that it all aligned during Pluto and Capricorn. And then we go into the new energies. So the question is like, how long are the new energies going to allow the old energies to take place? So let's see. You said I answered your question of Pluto, or you said of Jupiter in the 7th house in Capricorn, and I said it could be activated on working on the 7th house. Do I think that you can work on, I'm not sure what that is, by getting around people with good aspects? I am not sure what that is. I'm gonna have to screenshot that too and learn about that as well. You said, what can I expect when Neptune and Saturn transit your first house of Aries and it squares your Capricorn stellium from Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Venus, Saturn, and North Node? Oh my gosh, that's a lot. So you're gonna have Neptune and Saturn. So, okay, Neptune and Saturn transiting the first house, you might feel restricted to express the self during that period of time, or maybe there's certain things that like, you know, you were restricted by authoritative positions when you were younger. So it could have been the father, usually with Saturn, or the dominant masculine role in your life, and then it could be your teachers, it could be your managers, it could be any of these people could have restricted you, and maybe this is like coming up to be assessed during that period of time. And then Neptune, you might not see yourself clearly during this period of time. You could be like really, you know, testing to see like, who am I, figuring yourself out during that period of time, which is interesting because it's like you have a Capricorn stellium taking place as well. That is so much Capricorn. Sun, Uranus, Neptune, Venus, Saturn, and North Node. You're basically meant to master money in this lifetime. My thoughts on psychedelic usage for spirituality. Okay, I'll give you guys my opinion. And again, this is just my own opinion, okay? So as soon as something becomes mainstream, you have to question, why is it becoming mainstream, okay? So I think I explained in one of my previous lives, everything has a vibration and it's contingent upon your vibration where you're at, right? So it's like, for example, in terms of like plant medicine, if you are at a vibration that's lower than the plant medicine, it will pull you up to its vibration, right? But if you are above it, it's going to pull you down, right? So this is why it's hard to talk about, because it depends, what is your vibration, where are you at, right? But the thing is, ultimately at the end of the day, it's like certain things can maybe open you up energetically, but it's still up to you to hone in on that energy. Because it's like, if you're opening yourself up energetically through any form of substances, you're opening yourself up to everything, right, that is around and moving around, including darker energies and darker entities. So I just find it interesting, because when people get involved in like the plant medicine community, they kind of like just rely on that, and you don't want to be reliant on anything, because that's another form of giving your power away. Do you know what I mean? Because like people are going to rely on that to get messages, to get information, and these types of things, or something happens in their life, they're like, okay, I'm going to go do a plant medicine, you know, ceremony or whatever to like get clarity and whatever. It's like, I understand, you know, if you do it maybe once, but I've noticed a lot of these people get trapped in a spiritual ego, and then they're going around talking about like, how many plant medicine ceremonies did you do? And like, that's an egoic thing. You know what I mean? So it depends. It depends where you're at what point in time in your journey you're on. What is your frequency, and what is the frequency of the substance is basically what that is, right? So I'm going to bring it back to, if you're here, okay, and the substance is here, it could bring you up, right? But maybe you are now here and, you know, you're at the same level, but maybe you elevate above it, now it's pulling you down. And that's for everything, you guys. That is for even rituals, for example. That is for any sort of like ritualistic practices, all these things, right? Like, for example, back in the day, like, you know, certain people would do certain rituals, for example, whether it was religious or whatever, right? Whatever way, shape, or form it was pertaining to that particular time. Do you know what I mean? And that's because people were maybe at a lower vibration than the ritual was. So it's like when they will engage in this, it would pull them up higher, right? But it's like, if we do those things now, like those rituals, for example, now it's like you are now above that frequency. And it's not a hierarchical thing. It's just the way that we evolve energetically as being on this earth plane. So the thing is, ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to get to the point where you're fully sovereign. You know what I mean? Like sovereign in general, energetically. You are not relying on anything outside of you to tell you what to do. Even the people who are going around being like, this archangel told me this. And it's like, why are you relying on another entity to tell you what to do? Do you know what I mean? I get it when it's like a phase that the person is in, because that's like a density. Do you know what I mean? A lot of those things are the lower fourth dimension, in my own opinion, right? So then you'll see these people talking about very similar topics, but they're all kind of in the same frequency band. And it's like, you want to get out of that frequency band. You know what I mean? So again, it's like, if you were in a certain dimension or frequency and you're in that, that's new for you now, right? And it's like higher vibrational than where you were at, but it's like, eventually you want to get out of that energy as well. And it's like, you know, you don't want to depend on it. It's basically what that is. You don't want to depend on anything external, is really, really what that is. So it's up to you what you want to do. And you know, everyone has free will at the end of the day, but it's like, if you're engaging in certain things, it's going to open you up energetically, and most people don't know how to pull themselves back into their bodies, is basically what that is. And when you're energetically open, and it's like you do more, it's like more things are latching onto you energetically, because you are leaving your vessel during that period of time. Now, a whole other concept here as well to look at is, for example, you know, when people have like a plant medicine ceremony, you know, if you have a shaman there, and this is an experienced shaman, right? Which usually the most legit people are underground. It's not the people who are marketing things online, okay? But it's like, okay, so the shaman's job is to protect the space energetically, so no darker energies or entities come through. But it's like, now these days, everyone's trying to be a shaman. Everyone is trying to do that, right? And it's like, do these people know how to actually properly energetically protect the space so you are energetically protected as you are leaving your vessel? That is the question. Do you know what I mean? So it's this. It's really, really this. So that's in a nutshell, like, how I think about it. You said, so ultimately we can raise our vibration. Exactly. Without the need for substances. Exactly. And that's what you want to do. That's what you want to do, because it's like, here's the thing, like, if you stumbled into it, it's like, okay, that's fine. Do you know what I mean? Like, you just stumbled into it, and it's like, that was your situation, and maybe it led to something, right? But it's like, again, it depends, right? Like, on you as a person, because you don't want to depend on that particular being, right? At the end of the day, to take you higher. You want to be able to take yourself higher. Maybe it opened up your eyes, right? Like, maybe you did it, opened up your eyes, and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't know this whole world existed. Okay, so now your eyes are open. How can you access that on your own? Do you know what I mean? So that's kind of like what's happening here. Ultimately, at the end of the day, you want to get to the point of sovereignty in every way, shape, or form. So that's physical sovereignty in this lifetime, sovereignty like energetically from people around you, so you're not like binded to people. And then also the other sovereignty, spiritual sovereignty, where you're not like binding yourself to entities and beings and deities, right? Because the thing is, even when people are praying to certain entities and beings and deities, like things can be going well for them for a period of time, but keep in mind, all these entities come back to collect, okay? So don't be surprised if like 10, 15 years, everything is great, you were praying, and like it could be like a positive deity or, you know, being or whatever it was, right? But it's like they're still gonna come back to collect. That's the important thing to understand. So it's like, it all comes back down to not giving your power away, okay? So it's like, it can be in the physical reality to another person, it can be energetically, right? When you're signing certain things and contracts, it can be in the spiritual realms. So it's all of this, okay? So I hope that that makes sense. But especially back in the day, like, you know, especially again in certain, if you look at like different like, you know, periods of time and how they had their spiritual evolution, and if you actually start learning about that, it was like through the purification of the soul. Again, you do the clearing and all these types of things, you kind of go into the higher vibrations naturally on your own, is basically what that is, okay? You said you think that with, okay, I'm not going to say that word again, so the PSY, etc. We talked about that just now, okay? For the people who are rewatching the live, you said we can see a lot more. And then you said, but as Barbara says, we are open to all kinds of energies, exactly, and vibrations. You can tell when a drug is lowering or rising your spiritual levels. And it depends, because every single item or being or like everything, right, has a frequency, is really, really what that is. Everything has a frequency. So it's like, you know, when people do certain things, they think that they might be going to like certain realms or like they might be going higher, but it's like you can also look at people who do like other types of substances that aren't being marketed as something that's positive, and like they also think that they're going higher, is really what that is. But then you see them on the street and they're like bent over, for example, and they're not in their physical. So it's like, it's really interesting to see, because it's like, I think through doing certain substances, you are like tapping into a certain realm, especially like the synthetic ones, like those ones are taking people into like, I can't even like explain it, just like the way that I see it psychically, it's like those cartoony, like 2D types of realms is really, really what that is. So it's really interesting to see. You said Scorpio energy people completely exactly understand with the concept of sovereignty. Exactly. You said a clear spirit and keeping it up straight like a big muscle. Exactly. It's like a muscle. The hard part is to keep up and walk upright while maintaining constant posture. Higher level of mind is hard to maintain. Absolutely. Especially down here on this earth plane, because down here on this earth plane, everything is designed to take your power away from you, okay? And people are just used to doing that without even realizing that they're doing that. Do you know what I mean? So it's this. You said autonomous vibration, because what's the point of being an individual? Let me just see what else you guys said. You said with Leo placements, you want to know about the audience needed for Leo while not becoming or even appearing as a complete narcissist. It feels innocent, childlike, but also like an old soul, an actor in a mirror. It's as if the art is completed once observed, like an atom is changed with observation alone. The viewer and viewee are both changed. I love that. That was very like poetic. Okay, I'm going back up to see who I may have missed up here. But feel free to keep commenting down there, you guys, if you just joined the chat. I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, and questions about your natal charts. If you guys have any questions, feel free to comment below. You said Jupiter and Saturn, both in Capricorn in the second house. And then you said Aquarius, Sun, rising in Virgo, Moon. What would you like to know about that? It's so interesting. I was thinking about Jupiter conjuncting Saturn earlier today, like in people's charts. You said, we live on the earth to live, be the life, and counterparts of dark and death and passiveness, just your thoughts. So many. Are you guys all Mercury in the 12th house? People who are like, you guys write so poetically. It's very Mercury in the 12th house. You said your Saturn is in the 5th house. Okay, Saturn in the 5th house is really interesting, because Saturn in the 5th house has a karma when it comes to children. Okay, make sure you guys double tap the live to like the live. Thank you. Obviously, if you guys so choose to do so. Okay, so Saturn in the 5th house is karma with children. So either you have a child when you're younger, okay, or you have a child around your Saturn return. You can have children that are far apart in age for Saturn in the 5th house, or you might not have kids at all. And then the best case scenario is to have kids after the age of 35 when Saturn matures, okay? So it might feel like sometimes for Saturn in the 5th house, if you do want to have children, that Saturn is delaying having children, okay? But the whole reason that's happening is because like you can enjoy your time with your children more If you have them after the age of 35, like Saturn will give you more enjoyment. Another thing is the 5th house, okay? The 5th house is, you know, it's also love, dating, and relationships. So you might feel restricted in this area as well. But it's also your inner child. So it's like when you're younger, you could feel restricted in terms of your inner child. So sometimes people have children to kind of heal their inner child through the child. You know what I mean? You'll hear people all the time being like, oh, I gave my kids the life that I wanted, and these types of things, right? So it's like if you heal those aspects within yourself, then you don't have to do it through another being as well, okay? So that's kind of like the karma with Saturn in the 5th house. Sometimes karmically with Saturn in the 5th house, I've noticed these people, sometimes like it depends what they were doing prior to their Saturn return, because sometimes if these people were wilding out, right, and maybe avoiding responsibility, sometimes the child comes through around your Saturn return to pull it all back in, right? To bring through responsibility in your life, right? To kind of focus the energy so you're not wilding out. Sometimes that takes place as well, right? So it depends. Also, Saturn in the 5th house, sometimes the karma with kids with that energy as well could be the karma between you and the parent, right? The other parent of the child, okay? So it's this. So it's like karma around kids is basically what that is. No, I'm not doing any predictions of who's going to win the election. I did speak on like potential things that could take place, but that was like earlier in the life. I'm just going back up. You're welcome. Oh, I'm glad that it made sense. You said you have that energy in your chart. You have both Moon and Mars opposing Pluto in Scorpio. Oh, that's intense. Moon and Mars opposing Pluto in Scorpio. That is definitely very, very Plutonian. Chiron in Libra. Chiron in Libra, you're healing through relationships in this lifetime. You have Saturn in the 8th house at 29 degrees and in Aries. Okay, so Saturn in Aries is the subset of your generation, okay? So Saturn in Aries, you guys get restricted in expressing the self, and your Saturn return is coming up soon, actually. The time has been flying since 2020. Oh my goodness, the time has been flying. So Saturn and Aries, you guys are going to be basically like during your Saturn return, for example. Well, it depends because it's going to be you in the subset of your generation, right? So the house always affects you more actually during your Saturn return, but you in the subset of your generation got restricted in expressing the self, right? And being your own person in your individuality and, you know, being a starter, for example. So that's Saturn in Aries. So it's you and people within that 3-year bracket that share that energy. And then Saturn in the 8th house is intense because that's basically a restriction when it comes to intimacy, sexuality, vulnerability, expressing like your emotions and all these types of things. So that's something that you might have to master in this lifetime, being able to get in tune with your feelings, getting in tune with your emotions, okay? You know, who you are, how do you feel, expressing yourself, and these types of things. You said wilding out. Yeah. You said, do I know anything about cosmic consciousness? You had a dream where you died and was shown source, quote unquote. You said God, and then you said it was so beautiful and you felt so safe you didn't want to come back. That's so interesting. You probably did go into the higher vibrations. Hey, Kevin, how are you doing? What's up? I'm answering astrology questions, metaphysical questions, questions about your natal chart. So if you guys have questions, feel free to comment below. You said, thank you. Oh my gosh, you do have, see, I knew it. Mercury in the 12th house. It's the poetic type of writing. Like, it's just like, it literally sounds like a song. There's like a rhythm to it too for people who have Mercury in the 12th house. You said it's currently in the 11th, Sun, Pluto, and Saturn in the 12th house. The two are 29 degrees Libra. I know I saw some of your comments, Esperanza, definitely 12th house person. You said you have Mercury in the 10th house in Leo. When I say comments, like comments on the videos. He's a Mercury in the 10th house in Leo. You need to shine, Sapphire. You need to be on some sort of stage. And that Mercury in the 10th house, like you're money minded, right? You're here to elevate the financial status of the family line, the social status of the family line. And it's interesting because it's so interesting because sometimes I hear people say, for example, like the opposite, right? Where they're gonna be like, oh, I don't care about that. I don't care about those types of things. And it's like, again, you still have free will at the end of the day, but it's like there's still the soul desire that's there. So maybe if you were to get in tune with like the soul, for example, with the soul wands, and maybe take off whatever took place, maybe the upbringing, because a lot of the time people kind of have like the opposite reaction. So for example, okay, what do I mean by this? So for example, when I see, let's say Capricorn, and I say to Capricorn, or even 10th house, for example, and I say to them, and it's like, okay, you're here to elevate the financial and social status of the family line, then you, for example, not you who asked the question, but in general, like in general, the person, right, might think to themselves or might say, be like, oh, I don't care about those things. I don't care about money. And it's like, maybe you had the upbringing where there was like a hyper focus on money. So you develop like a negative relationship with money, but that's kind of like the karma with Capricorn. Like it's to be seen in this way is basically what that is. And usually Capricorn's like karma or energy, like whatever way, shape, or form you guys want to look at it, is after the age of 35, you start seeing those things come into fruition. What are my thoughts on A house overlays in Synastry? You heard that it's pretty rough. There are hard aspects. Oh, I'm guessing you're saying if there are hard aspects. And they said, but what if you have planets in the second? It's like it would oppose that. Okay, so A house Synastry depends, okay? It always depends how evolved are the two people. That's with Synastry anything, okay? It depends how evolved are the two people, how evolved are they in their own energy, and like when it comes to relationships. Because the thing is with A house Synastry, the energy can be very intense, it can be very sexual, it can be very also possessive and controlling, and where are you? Why didn't you call me? And like blowing up the phone and checking the phone, like these types of things, the manipulation, right? All these types of things, like power and control types of things. So that's like shadow A house. But if the people are evolved or you've overcome that in your relationship, like the fear of kind of losing the other person, right? Or even like possession, right? Which is also like the shadow of the A house. Well, in that case, you're going to go into the divine version of the A house where it's like you guys have a relationship that is deep and it's intimate. And basically this relationship is very much close and you guys might go into the higher realms together and it's like mind, body, spirit. So it depends. Do you know what I mean? It depends how evolved are the two people. Now, what I will say, also it depends on you as a person, right? Because if you're already used to the energy, maybe you're an A house person or maybe you have Scorpionic energy or maybe you have Pluto aspect, like you could be used to the Plutonian energy. You could recognize these things, for example. And it's like when you recognize these things, then you'll be able to navigate the relationship more easily, right? But it's like if you haven't transmuted that within yourself, and this person is coming through to show you a mirror, right, to transmute these things. So that's the thing. Like I was thinking about this once, and maybe I was saying on one of my lives, but I was thinking about it once, and it's like people are either Scorpio types of people. So you're either Scorpionic or like A house type of person, right, where you're used to the energies and you have gone through the metamorphosis within yourself. Sometimes it affects people within their lives where it's like a transit, and through the transit, you're going through this like Plutonian destruction type of thing, or it could be in a relationship, okay? So anytime a relationship has a lot of sexual energy and there's a lot of attraction, well, the attraction, also the sexual energy is healing energy, right? So it's gonna bring up whatever's going on at the base of the spine for either one or both of the parties to basically assess, is basically what that is, okay? So it depends what's going on within you, what's going on within the other person. So it's like if maybe you're the one who's more evolved, you can help the other person by recognizing their traits and be like, okay, you're being possessive right now. Or like maybe you'll be like, okay, you know, if I act in this type of way, like it's triggering their abandonment, like bringing it to the surface for them. More often than not, when people are unaware and they come into these A house types of contact, it's because they're unaware. Do you know what I mean? And all these things come to the surface. It feels intense. It feels karmic. It feels passionate. You can't, you know, leave the person. I love you. I hate you. Like, you know, these toxic types of things, right? But it's bringing to the surface all these things that are chilling at the base of the spine, which ultimately everybody should transmute, is basically what that is, right? So it's just a matter of like, at what point in time are you transmuting the energy? Is it already in your energetic field, or is it coming up through a relationship, or is it coming up through a transit? But more often than not, it's going to be through relationships, because it's like that sexual energy is bringing everything to the surface. I hope that makes sense, okay? If you look at the chakras, okay, the sexual energy is chilling at the base of the spine. So it's like, if there's anything that's not processed, or like the subconscious is also the root chakra, okay? You can look at it that way. So if it's not processed, right, and you're maybe in these lower chakras, or you have some sort of fears or fears of abandonment, like anything that could be collective, it could be your own stuff, it could be passed on to you, whatever way, shape, or form it's coming through, it's coming up, right, through the sexual energy. And sometimes you don't have to engage with these people. Sometimes the sexual energy is just present, and because it's so strong and it's present, it's bringing everything to the surface, right? So it's basically this. I hope that makes sense. Yes. Let's see. You said, is it possible for you to align timelines for yourselves? Absolutely. Honestly, guys, you can do anything that you want. It's just like you have to come out of the lower chakras. It's basically what that is, okay? So you have to come out of the lower chakra wounds and desires and fears and these things that could be controlling you unconsciously. So it's usually like egoic. Do you know what? Like you have to get to the point where it's like you have to be aware. Are you choosing certain things because of ego-driven reasons, or is it coming from a heart-centered place, okay? So when you're in a heart-centered place, you're more in flow, right? When it's coming from an ego-driven reason, it's all these things that I just mentioned. It could be a fear-based thing. It could be like what somebody wants for you. It could be something that's projected onto you. It could be something that you think you should do. It's society's expectations of you. You know, there's a certain trajectory to do these things. Or it's like you see a certain path, for example, where a person was successful, and it's like, you know, you're trying to copy and mimic that exact path, right? But it's like at the end of the day, everybody has their own energetic, you know, imprint. So it's like you can take someone's, you know, trajectory as like the skeleton, right? So like as the idea, but it's like in between, you should still be adding your own energy and your own flair to it, right? So that's going to be a lot of like the Pluto and Aquarius and like Age of Aquarius vibes, okay? So for you to go into like higher timelines and these types of things, you need to be operating out of the higher chakras. I hope that makes sense, because then you're not making decisions based on the lower 3 chakras. You're making decisions based on the upper 3 chakras. You want to integrate the self is basically what that is, okay? And that takes time, of course. He said interaction, friction, Scorpio, sex, energy fights, fight for a ruler of power. And it's interesting, right? Because a lot of that fight for power comes from ego, and it comes from attachment is basically what that is. A lot of relationships are based on attachment, if you think about it, right? I actually have a video coming out. Actually, I'm not going to spoil it for you guys, but it is a deeper look at Scorpio energy. That's all I'm going to say, okay? So, yes, so stay tuned for that. You said, hey, Barbara. Hey, I like your name. You said you have Venus at 29 degrees in the first house in Pisces. And then you said Aquarius, Sun, Taurus, Moon. Your dream job is modeling. Nice. Any advice for this type of placement in terms of pursuing this? Well, is your first house Pisces overall? I'm curious to know. Venus and Pisces can literally make money through the self. So you can literally make money through like the physical self is really what that is. So it could be modeling, for example, with that first house Venus. And then let me see, are you commenting down here? Okay, if you're still in the room, let me know if you're Pisces rising overall. But yes, with just that information, yes. But the thing is, I'd have to look at your whole chart, right, to get more information to see what else is going on in there. But yeah, the first house, you can literally make money through the self. So it can be through, like, let's say athletics. It can be through presenting something. It can literally be through your physical appearance, because you tend to be good looking when you have Venus in the first house. You tend to have that charm. You tend to have that charisma. Venus in the first house. It could be a construction job sometimes, right? You're using your physical body. It can be, for example, like a retail job, or sometimes teachers stand all day. You know what I mean? So it depends on the rest of the combinations in the chart. So, and Aquarius Sun, I've seen a lot of people who are in like public roles. They tend to have Aquarius, Leo, Sagittarius, and Gemini in their big 3. You said, oh, it's overall in Aries. You're stepping away. You're probably doing your own thing in this lifetime, actually, when you have Aries rising. So you're stepping away from like the family line, what the family wants for you, these types of things. Let's see. He said, what do I feel like some of my life purpose is? Very, very good question. I'm a Scorpio at the end of the day, so I could tell you, but I'm not going to finish that thought. You guys can finish it for me in your minds. You said, how can I cut cords with people? Who's connected to you telepathically? Okay, here's the thing, you guys. Okay, I'm going to try to explain this from an energetic perspective, okay? So how to cut cords with people. First of all, if you see the person all the time, it's going to be hard to cut cords with that person, okay? Because you see them all, if there's any sort of like interaction, right? So every time you interact with them, there's a cord that's connected to that person, right? So it depends, right? If you're not interacting with them, it's gonna be easier to cut cords with this person because they're not within your energetic vicinity. But it's like either they can connect the cord to you or you can connect the cord to them, because it's like even if you walk by them because you see them all the time, right? They think of you and now the cord is connected to you, okay? So it depends, like how deep are you into the situation is really, really what that is with this person. Now the thing is, every night before you go to bed, you can kind of just like think to yourself, right? You can be like, I call back my power. I cut all cords with all the people, you know, that I interact with today. You can do it that way. You can do some sort of cleansing energy, right? Whether you use herbs, whether you pray, like whatever way, shape, or form or manifest, you can do it this way as well, right? But it's like, again, it depends. Who is this person, right? And because you're asking telepathically, if you're thinking of the person, you know, they're probably thinking of you, like someone is thinking about the other person. So it's like, I call this energetic ping pong, okay? So this is the energetic thing that I'm going to try to explain to you guys, right? So I call it energetic ping pong. So sometimes one person has a thought, because we're all telepathic, right? So usually if you're constantly thinking about someone, like they could potentially be picking up on your energy, or they could be thinking about you, and like because they're thinking about you, you're picking up on their energy. So this is kind of how it works. It's like one person has the thought and then the other person picks up on it. And it's like the more that you think about it, it turns into this energetic ping pong, because it's like bouncing back and forth energetically between the two people, right? So to end that, you have to stop thinking about the person is basically what that is, right? That's how you cut the cord. So it's like, if you feel like there's unfinished business or something of the sort, maybe you'll have to talk to them, you know what I mean? Or, you know, maybe you can like, if you don't feel like you can talk to them or you don't want to, you can write it out, like get it out of your system, and then just like try to direct your focus onto something else is basically what that is, okay? To cut like the telepathic cords. What are you guys saying? Okay, I'm gonna go back up here. You said, you mentioned that because you do think that you sound like AI. Really? You said it's a 12th house, Mercury and a retrograde. Your mind moves fast, like how I talk. And then you said, I don't feel that because it's like the 12th house Mercury has soul to it. You know what I mean? Like AI energy has no soul, but it's like the everyday person might not be able to pick up on that, if that makes sense. Like AI energy, when you tap into it, it's like robotic, it's like empty. Do you know what I mean? So I don't tap into that like when I read certain things like that you write in particular. So I'm curious to know like why you think that. Okay, I'm just going back up to see what you guys were saying up here. You said you think the theme of today's live broadcast may be fatigue. You find it interesting that you were thinking that before Mary asked her question about energy drains. What did Mary ask? Let me go back up here. I may have missed it. Yeah, there's definitely like an intense energy that is taking place, like because again, I feel like we're getting to the end of Pluto in Capricorn, and like a lot of things are coming to the surface for a lot of people. And it's like, okay, if you're energetically sensitive and you pick up on people's unprocessed things, like that is also energetically draining. I hope that makes sense, right? Because it's like, it's unprocessed stuff. Because it's unprocessed, it's like a lot of the time when things are unprocessed, there's like a cognitive dissonance element connected to it. So sometimes if you tap into the person and you're trying to figure out what's going on, there's like this cognitive dissonance, because it's like when something is unprocessed, it's like the whole thing that's happening energetically is like, I'm going to try to explain this to you guys in like a simple way, right? So when people have unprocessed trauma, it's like the traumatic events took place, and it's like, this is how fragmentation of the soul happens, because it's like for the person to cope with that. And by the way, I'm not a psychologist, okay? All right, that's my disclaimer always, you guys, okay? But this is just my own opinion energetically, okay, from a metaphysical perspective. So, you know, when someone has a traumatic event take place, it's like they have to somehow rationalize that. So there could be like a cognitive dissonance energy taking place, right? Because it's like when you go through something traumatic, the external world doesn't match up with your internal world, for example. So this is how people fragment, right? So a lot of people are walking around actually energetically fragmented, because it's like you will see sometimes they will do this and then sometimes they'll do that. And it's like, it's almost like both of those aspects are actually taking place within the person, but it's like the person is fragmented. I hope that makes sense. So you said you think that most Scorpios would agree that their life purpose has a burning desire to get to the bottom of things, to understand truth. You said you recently came across the fact that your fingers hold the most electricity in the body. It's good for us to place them in a diamond shape. Oh, that's so interesting. Yeah, well, you have a lot of like mudras. Hey, oh my gosh, I love you guys too. You have a lot of the mudras in even yoga, for example. Like those, all of these things come from somewhere, right? So like if you look at it and you're like, okay, that makes sense. Like they're all gonna have their own explanation, right? So when you're meditating, if you're trying to bring through certain types of energies. But what I like that I learned and I thought was super cute was like the whole reason that people that are like dating or like in love, like they hold hands, or just like it could be family sometimes, right? Like because it's like a heart-to-heart connection, because like the palms are an extension of the heart space. So I found that really, really cute and interesting. You said, is there a Scorpio moon right now? There was a Scorpio moon. It was the new moon in Scorpio, right? But the moon changes every 2 days. So maybe it's not that anymore. Yes, what would you guys like to know? Fourth house Aquarius, and then the ruler is Uranus in the third house. What would you like to know about that? You said attachment is key for Scorpio. Without attachment, we have nothing to fight for, which Sag has learned to give up. You love how astrology makes so much sense. Well, that's something that Scorpio is actually meant to master. They're meant to like release attachment. That's the thing with like even Pluto, Scorpio, and the A house, you guys, because it's like, how do I explain this? It's like the second you let go, everything comes to you. Do you know what I mean? Because it's like the more that you're trying to get something, the more you're pushing that thing energetically away. It's a little bit counterintuitive, right? But that's kind of how energetically it works. Like, okay, I'm sure you guys have maybe all felt at some point in time, if someone was like desperately trying to talk to you all the time, it's like, you're kind of like, okay, like, can you take a step back, right? So that's kind of like a physical manifestation of this energy, right? So it's the same thing. If you're like desperately trying to get something, which Scorpio is like, depends where you have it in your chart, what house it's in, or even where you guys have Pluto in your charts, like you'll see where they're trying to control that area, but you're actually meant to learn to surrender and let go, right? So that's the elevated Scorpio, is when they finally have surrendered and they understand that everything comes to them, right? You're no longer trying to control the outcome. Capricorns are supposed to master the material plane, basically, in this lifetime. Yes, discipline, material plane, wealth, status, right? So Capricorn has a very good understanding, especially if you're a Capricorn stellium. I always joke around and I'm like, okay, Capricorns start hustling out of the womb, right? Because they have this higher self-awareness or unconscious awareness, like whatever way, shape, or form you guys want to look at it. They just have this awareness to them where they know how long things take time down here on this earth plane, right? So they start hustling young, okay? The Capricorn energy, right? You know, they're the ones that had like the lemonade stands when they were like 9 or 10, right? That's Capricorn energy. Or, you know, you're doing something, but then you're trying to think of a business idea. Like that's all Capricorn. So Capricorn, you know, their discipline, the whole concept is like they pick the one thing that they want to do and then they become disciplined at that thing, right? Because those are the things that thrive down here on this earth plane, right? It's the Capricorn energy, it's the Virgo energy, and it's the Taurus energy, right? So if you want to be quote unquote successful, you want to look at how do these people do things is basically what that is, okay? So Capricorn is also patience. It's also like grit, okay? Because sometimes like you can see within a person when they will be successful because they have that grit factor to them. Do you know what I mean? They don't let things knock them down easily. And a lot of the time you'll see that with Capricorns because Capricorn energy gets knocked down a lot, right? It's kind of like that whole quote, like get down 7 times or fall down 7 times, get up 8. That's Capricorn's motto. And also another motto Capricorn has is like, you are the 5 people that you surround yourself with, okay? Capricorn is aware of this. So they're like spiritual because all the signs from Scorpio onwards are spiritual in their own way, but Capricorn is more grounded in their spirituality is basically what that is. And they just like have this like awareness already like of how this earth plane operates is basically what that is. So you will see them hustling is basically what that is to get to where it is that they're trying to go. And then later on in life when they get there, usually after the age of 35, especially if you have a Capricorn stellium, because that's when Saturn matures, okay? Because all the planets mature at a different time. After then, you'll see them start to go more into their inner child. So that's why they also age backwards. So when they're younger, they can come off like very authoritative, older even, right, than their age, you know, very mature when they're younger. And then when they're older, they might seem younger because they're more in the inner child, right? Because at that point in time, you know, Capricorn is like, okay, so the thing is like Capricorn is interesting because they are basically trying to master like the financial stability. So eventually if they so choose to, okay, is to have a family, right? And enjoy their time because it's like they bounce off a Cancer in this way. So Cancer stability is family is basically what that is. And then they go off into the world and then Capricorn kind of wants the stability first through the finances and the earthly plane and these types of things. And then they kind of go into like the familial aspect of things. They might not have kids or they might not have a family of their own, but then they might go into their own inner child as well. Hope that makes sense, okay? You said, yeah, but the palms, yeah, right? Is that not so cute? Oh, Diana, no, you didn't. You said point of view of Pisces 4 house at 22 degrees. Okay, so that is going to be your home. Is going to be your upbringing, okay? It's going to be the vibe of your home. So Pisces in the 4th house is interesting because for these people, a few things could have taken place, okay? Sometimes these people incarnate into homes where the parents are just like absent-minded, right? So they're just like doing their own thing, they're escapists, okay? It could be this. Sometimes they could have just been working all the time, for example. Sometimes I found with Pisces 4th house, the parents could have been like very young or like immature to have kids. So it's like they just like weren't ready in this way. So it's like you spend a lot of time because Pisces in the 4th house is like a lot of time in your room and like your own space, and that's kind of how you get connected to the spiritual aspect of life. Now it is a plane of duality, so like the divine version of this, right, and the most ideal case scenario for Pisces in the 4th house could also manifest into like, you know, an unconditionally loving home to the point where it's like smothering and you might have to learn to separate yourself from the home, and the 4th house can be the mother as well, okay? So it depends which one of these two directions it goes into. Sometimes the parents can also be like artsy, do you know what I mean? Kind of like two artists trying to make it in the world, and it's like then they have the kid, right? So it could be this as well for Pisces in the 4th house. They could be very spiritual. It could be very spiritually open house. It could be a religious household as well. So it depends, right? Which one of these directions it goes into. But that's kind of like the overall vibe. I don't do Vedic astrology. I just do the tropical Placidus system for now. So how does Pluto operate when it's in Scorpio? I have a playlist for the generational planets. So you can check that out because if I start talking about Pluto and Scorpio, I will talk about it for probably like 30 minutes, okay? But it's a generational planet and it is the millennial generation, okay? And basically all the things that they have incarnated together to clear, to heal, clear for themselves, clear for the family line, clear for the future generations to come, for the collective, and then for themselves on that soul level, okay? Let's see what else you guys saying in here. You said letting go is key. It's powerful to make room. Exactly. But sometimes like Scorpio, it's interesting. It depends like what, because Scorpio, again, there's the different degrees of Scorpio. Sometimes Scorpio can be chaotic energetically as well. Like when they are in the lower versions of Scorpio, sometimes they can be actually energy vampires themselves. So they can kind of like create chaos around them to feed off of the energy, right? So it depends, right? At what point in time the Scorpio energy like is taking place? How much have they evolved? what version of Scorpio are they in. Pluto and Sag, that's also another generational planet, okay, or placement. So you're part of the Gen Z generation. Gen Z is really interesting because it's like, okay, so Gen Z overall, they are here to raise the consciousness in terms of like they fight for the underdog. They're all about freedom because it's Sag. A lot of them are very entrepreneurial from a young age. It could be this as well for Pluto and Sag. And then that's the overall generation. So in a nutshell, I have a video on that as well if you want to learn more about Pluto and Sag, okay? But the 12th house, so Pluto in the 12th house, your unconscious, okay, you can kind of look at it as like your unconscious is brought into this lifetime from a previous lifetime. So there's a lot of things that you're going to have to resolve in terms of your unconscious, and it might not even have anything to do with this lifetime, okay? That's how Pluto in the 12th house. So these people can be like natural psychologists, like you'll be able to read people really well, but there's also like a lot of darkness that comes with Pluto in the 12th, because again, everything that I mentioned earlier, you guys, like all of the shadow aspects of the human in general is the Plutonian things that are chilling at the base of the spine, right? So again, everything to do with like any sort of shadow behaviors, right? Anything to do with like abandonment issues, manipulation, control, jealousy, possessiveness, all these things, right? Attachment, like that's all that Plutonian energy, and it's in the 12th house, right? So you're like clearing through that basically in this lifetime. Sometimes those people can become like cult leaders. I'm not saying this is you, but sometimes they can, right? Because sometimes Pluto feels powerless in the area that it's in when it's younger, and then sometimes it tries to regain control and power. It can, because it's the 12th house, it can be, you know, through spirituality, right? This person could be trying to gain control and power and so on and so forth, right? Kind of like a cult leader type of vibe. So it might not be you, but just something to pay attention to, okay? Because it can go into manipulation and spiritual manipulation as well. Okay, guys, there's so many good questions in the chat, but I have to actually head out. So I will be back next week or maybe the week after. We'll see. Okay, but I always post the live before I am live, and the chat is always open. So feel free to always like ask your questions before I start the live, because it's going to be posted. The chat becomes live when the live becomes posted. I hope that makes sense. If you guys have your, you know, any questions about, or you want your own natal chart reading, progressed natal chart reading, synastry reading, all these things, send me an email. The email is going to be in the description box below. It's going to be on my website. Okay, you go under the readings tab and an email window should pop up, and we can go from there. Thank you for your questions, for your likes, your shares, and your subscribes, for being a part of this channel. And also, if I didn't get to your question this time, I'll get to your question next time. I hope you all have a beautiful rest of your day or evening, wherever you guys are.